Hey there, it's Mikare. Today I want to make a quick and dirty video about how to harden off your spring seedlings. It's going to be ever so slightly different than doing this in the fall, in that in the spring I typically do this in the morning, and in the fall I usually do it in the evening, and that is because of temperatures, so it's going to depend on the actual day and the forecast. So you may be wondering what the point of hardening off our plants is. Just like our bodies, our bones, and our muscles, our plants are made out of living tissue. Living tissue needs some stress to be strong. If we lived a completely sedentary life and then we decided to run a marathon and we did no training, we just went and ran that marathon, first of all, we would very likely fail. And also we would very likely get hurt because we haven't put our bodies through smaller stresses to build themselves. So the same is going to go with our plants. When we start seedlings indoors, they don't have all the wind acting on their stems, and they don't have the UV from the actual sunlight. The lights that we put them under are not as harsh, and the window that we grow them in is not as harsh as the actual sunlight. So we want to go gradually and in steps. I do a 1-week process of hardening off my plants. I have heard people in milder regions talk about they just put theirs out in a shady spot that stay shady all day long and they leave them there. That might be okay in a milder climate. I don't know. I've lived in North Texas and I've lived on the Gulf Coast. I don't know about gardening in mild climates, but I do know that the first day that you move a plant out into the sun, if you give it too much sun here in North Texas, the leaves will scorch. So here's one that I forgot one night to put up. So you can see that this leaf, as well as this one over here, got some sunburn, and that was my fault. Or I had a seed tray that was a couple of days ahead of the seed tray that this one was in when I was hardening off, and I put them both out in the table where they go to sunlight, and I forgot to put this tray up. And I realized it a few days later, actually, after I found the damaged leaves. This one had been in shade for several days, and it just got too much sun on the first day out. So it's worth a shot, and if you are very busy, sticking them in a shady spot might be what you need to do, but be aware that you might get some sunburn on your leaves, okay? So let's take a really quick look at how I actually go through this process myself. So I start most of my seedlings in the spring indoors on a shelf under lights. So I refer to that as their nursery. You might grow yours in a window or some other kind of a situation. Maybe it's a totally enclosed greenhouse. Whatever it may be, we're calling that your nursery for right now. So on day 1 of what I call day camp, they come out here and they go 1 hour in the shade. Again, this is something you might be able to blur depending on the weather. One reason for that, there's the light, but there's also the fact that they're coming from my room, which is in the 70s, to out here where it's in the 90s right now. Yes, it's early May, and we have our first full week over 90 happening now. They'll come out here for my climate for 1 hour, and then they'll go back to their nursery. That is day 1. On day 2, we just step it up. And like I said, I usually do this in the morning time because it's a little bit cooler. It wasn't 90 at 9 o'clock this morning. So on day 2, they're going to come out from their nursery into this place, which is under a patio on a shelf, and they're going to stay here for 2 hours. And then they're going to go back inside. Day 3, we're going to do 3 hours, and then they really can stay in the shade after that. And again, you can blur these lines a little bit depending on your weather. But being out here is going to give them some exposure to the actual UV, even though it's filtered and shaded. It's going to give them more wind, and they're going to adjust to more temperatures. If your nights are mild, at this point, they can transition into sleepover camp. I usually let mine have 1 day of sun before I go to sleepover camp, because forgetting about sleepover camp is how that one plant got burned. So this is days 1 through 3, and then we're going to adjust them gradually out there. You know, I have to do this part. Please, 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 would you hit the like button? And if you're not already subscribed, would you please hit subscribe? Doing both of those things lets YouTube know that you like videos like mine, and then they put my videos in front of more people who are like you, and that helps me grow. So if you could do that, I would really appreciate it. It would help me out so much. Thank you. Beginning on day 4, they're going to transition into real sunlight, full sun, unless it's a plant that can't handle full sun. Know your plants. Day 4, I'm going to let it have its first hour out in the sun. After 1 hour, when it's cooler, not in the heat of the day and the height of the sun like right now, when it's cooler, 1 hour in the sun, and then they'll go back into their shady spot. For 3 hours or the rest of the day, they can spend the night if the temperatures are going to be mild enough. Day 5, same kind of idea, 2 hours on this table, and then back into the shade. You can start to squeak it a little bit at this point. If it's kind of cloudy, you can let them stay out a bit longer. If they're looking okay, you can let them stay out a bit longer. Day 6, we're going to do 3 hours out here in the morning. You guessed it, back into the shade. After that, they should be set to go. Night 6, when they have their sleepover on night 6, if you're not expecting strong winds, hail, damaging rain, Texas, then they can just go ahead and live outside now. All of these seedlings live on this table now. And very clearly, many of these seedlings are ready to transplant. Finally. So that's really it. That is the whole quick and dirty of hardening off your spring seedlings in a not so mild climate. Alrighty? Later, y'all.